Welcome back to the Daughters of the Moon podcast. We're grateful that you can join us for another week. And Mom and I are super excited to welcome back Dennis Henson to the show. As you know, we've been doing a 12-part series, and this is 12 of 12 that we're going to be wrapping up. So we're super happy that we were able to do this series with Dennis. So thank you, Dennis. And we're going to listen about Disney. So I think this will be really exciting for everybody.
Well, it
So
should be.
So we will do that. So welcome, Dennis. Anyways, while I'm getting it caught up, thank you so much for being on here and doing this with us. It's been really exciting and we really appreciate it.
Sharing your time with us. Yes, thank
Uh,
you.
Thank you for having me.
So, okay, let's listen.
The Dreamer. For many, simply hearing the name Disney sparks delightful memories. Walt Disney's creations have entertained children and grown-ups alike, from cartoons, movies, books, toys, TV shows, theme parks, cruises, or a simple Mickey Mouse watch. Yet Walt's ascent to the pinnacle of Big Thunder Mountain wasn't an easy climb. Its ups and downs were more exciting than those in any amusement park. So climb aboard, buckle up, and in just a few moments, we'll begin our trip to the wonderful world of Walt Disney. Enjoy the ride. Once upon a time, in 1901 in Chicago, Walter Elias Disney was born, the fourth son of Elias and Flora Disney. When Walt was 2, a baby sister Ruth was added to the family. When he was 3, his family moved to a small farm near Marceline, Missouri. The happiest time of my life. Walt and little sister Ruth experienced many exciting adventures on the farm. However, farm life wasn't easy for Elias. Financial challenges caused his demeanor to be harsh and unpleasant. In 1907, Walt's brothers, Herbert and Raymond, ran away and moved back to Chicago. Still, young Walt loved the beauty and freedom of the countryside. He enjoyed fishing, watching passing trains, and visiting downtown Marceline under the supervision of his remaining brother, Roy. Walt's grandmother often read fairy tales to him and Ruth at bedtime. As she read, Walt would drift off and become part of the stories. Another thing that he really enjoyed was being around and playing with farm animals. He gave each animal a name and carried on imaginary conversations with them, bestowing them with human-like qualities. His best friend was a pig named Porker. Porker was intelligent and enjoyed playing with him. She even allowed Walt to ride on her back. I guess I really loved that pig. She had an acute sense of fun and mischief. You remember the foolish pig and the three little pigs? Porker was the model for him. Yet drawing was Walt's true passion. His sketches were popular with his family and nearby neighbors. Once a doctor friend paid him a nickel for drawing a sketch of his horse. Yet Elias wasn't impressed by Walt's art and thought he should spend more time on farm work. On the other hand, Flora encouraged the boy and convinced his father to purchase a set of colored pencils and a Big Chief tablet. Overjoyed with his gift, young Disney spent much of his time copying cartoons from newspapers and the pictures in his grandmother's fairy tale book. Despite Walt's later remarkable success with his art, Elias never considered it a real profession. While living on the farm, Walt became infatuated with trains. He and Ruth loved to watch them pass by on the nearby Santa Fe Railroad. By putting his ear to the tracks, he could hear an approaching locomotive a mile away. The children's Uncle Mike, an engineer, would often bring them a bag of candy when his train passed near the farm. And sometimes Uncle Mike would allow Walt to pull the cord and blow the train's whistle. Main Street. Walt, Ruth, and Roy formed a lifelong bond while enjoying the happiest times of their lives in Marceline. The little town's Main Street was a beehive of activity, with shops, restaurants, dry goods stores, and a theater. For the most part, it was a typical early 20th century Midwestern city. If you've ever walked Main Street in Disneyland or Walt Disney World, you've seen a glimpse of the way Walt remembered Marceline. The siblings took every opportunity to spend time in the city. Buffalo Bill Cody's Wild West show was in town on one visit. Cody, who'd been a rider for the Pony Express, an Army Scout, and a buffalo hunter, headed up a popular circus-like Wild West show that traveled from city to city in the early 1900s. A parade was scheduled to draw attention to upcoming performances. When a large crowd gathered, lining the entire length of Main Street, Buffalo Bill himself appeared, driving the lead wagon. As the procession began, Bill spotted a small boy gazing in amazement. Cody asked him if he'd like to ride. Walt climbed up and sat beside the greatest showman of the Old West. Throughout the route, Walt smiled and waved to the crowd. After that first experience with a celebrity, he commented, "I was mighty impressed." On other visits to downtown Marceline, Walt attended a circus, a movie, and a live play, Peter Pan. Between the farm, going downtown, and fishing, Walt and Ruth couldn't have had it much better. Despite their bliss, the stress of running a farm was more than Elias could handle. So, to the children's dismay, he sold the farm and moved the family to Kansas City. Kansas City. At the tender age of 9, Walt found himself a stranger in a big city. But all was not lost because he discovered a spectacular distraction, Electric Park, a few blocks from his new home. Electric Park. In 1910, electric lights were still a rarity. Only the very rich had them in their homes. Consequently, a large light display drew a crowd, especially in the American heartland. Kansas City's Electric Park featured more than 100,000 lights. It was designed to depict a small German village. It included a merry-go-round, a roller coaster, and 10 other rides. There was a shooting gallery, a penny arcade, a bandstand, a dance pavilion, a performance theater, a bowling alley, and animal attractions. But the thing that most captured Walt was the scenic train ride encircling the park. At night, strands of light outlined every attraction. A luminescent fountain served as a stage for nightly live shows with actors dressed in colorful costumes. Finally, the park featured a massive fireworks display each evening just before closing. The vision. When the young boy first saw the park at night, the vision left a lasting impression. Long strands of lights, raised from their centers by poles of various lengths, were placed throughout the park. Viewing the scene from a distance, those lofty lighted spheres and ornate turrets amid the illuminated structures rising high into the black, star-filled Midwestern sky were magical. That mystical sight reminded Walt of the magnificent castles in the fairy tales that his grandmother read to him. The scene, augmented by the flashes of shooting Roman candles and exploding rockets, was one he'd never forget. And decades later, his reconstruction of that vision would become an integral part of Disney magic. Elementary school and a newspaper route. Elias, strict as he was, frowned on playtime, sweets, toys, and especially amusement parks. He purchased 2 Kansas City Star newspaper routes with the money from the farm sale. Walt and Roy were assigned the daily responsibility of delivering newspapers. For the next few years, in worn-out shoes, the 2 boys delivered papers from 4:30 a.m. until school started, then from the end of the school day until the evening routes were completed. Walt found classes at Benton Grammar School challenging, often nodding off and missing parts of the lessons. When awake, his class time was spent daydreaming of fairy tales and distant castles or sketching animals and locomotives. 3 positive things happened during those school days. First, Walt was cast to play Peter Pan in the school play, and when it was time for Peter to fly, Roy hoisted him by pulling a rope, a remarkable foreshadowing of things to come. Second, the Kansas City Star rewarded its paper boys with a pass to the black and white silent movie Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs. And lastly, he met and befriended Walter Pfeiffer. Walter's father liked young Disney and allowed him to accompany his family to vaudeville shows and motion pictures. Disney subsequently spent more time with the Pfeiffers than with his family and couldn't get enough of vaudeville or the movies. He visited vaudeville acts so often that he memorized the gags and shared them with his schoolmates. First attempt at animation. When Ruth became bedridden with measles, Walt was assigned to take care of her. Anxious to keep her entertained, he made his first attempt at animation by creating a series of drawings. When flipped, the pictures appeared to move. The young entrepreneur. As the newspaper routes grew, they became more than Walt and Roy could handle, so Elias paid other boys to help make the deliveries. Yet he never compensated Walt or Roy for their work. That is their part as family members. So when Roy finished high school, he'd had enough, and in 1912, he left the family to work for his Uncle Will. Conversely, Walt was industrious and earned his own money. While still running his newspaper routes, he charged businesses to deliver packages, purchased additional newspapers to sell independently, and in exchange for haircuts, drew customer caricatures for a barber. The young entrepreneur then spent his money on candy, snacks, and train rides at Electric Park. He also enrolled in a correspondence course on drawing cartoons and attended art classes at the Kansas City Art Institute. When Walt was 15, Elias sold the paper routes, invested the profits in the Chicago Jelly Company, and moved to Illinois. But this time, Walt chose to stay behind and moved in with Roy. News butcher for the Santa Fe Railroad. On his own for the first time, things didn't go that well. Roy helped Walt secure a position as a news butcher for the Santa Fe Railroad and loaned him the required $15 bond. For the next 2 months, Walt enjoyed the romance of traveling along sprawling lines to cities in a half-dozen states. His blue serge uniform, brass buttons, cap, and badge made him feel important. As trains rolled into each station, he stood beside the conductor, offering to sell passengers magazines, peanuts, candy, apples, and soft drinks. And though Walt loved working around trains, he couldn't resist eating his products. And when he failed to collect the soft drink bottles after one trip, he lost all the money for their deposits. Soon he was broke and was forced to rejoin his parents. While living in the Windy City and working at his father's jelly factory, he decided that art would be his future. Needless to say, Elias was not impressed with that decision. Nevertheless, he arranged for him to take classes at the Chicago Academy of Fine Arts. High school in World War I. At 16, Walt entered McKinley High, where he became the school photographer and produced drawings for the newspaper. But World War I was raging, and when Roy enlisted in the Navy, Walt dropped out of school to follow suit. Unfortunately, he was rejected for being underage. Yet when one of his friends learned that the Canadian Army was accepting younger volunteers, the two boys planned to sneak across the border to enlist. However, when his friend's mother found his packed suitcase, she called Walt's mother and ended their plans. Still determined, his friend learned that the American Ambulance Corps would accept volunteers as young as 17. So, Walt, still 16, took a black pen and altered the birth year on his notarized passport application, making him appear 17. He then enlisted in the Red Cross Ambulance Corps on September 16, 1918. While his parents were unhappy about him going overseas, they reluctantly agreed. A very close call. Simultaneously, the horrific Spanish flu epidemic was raging. Nearly one half of the deaths it caused were among young adults. Hospitals were overwhelmed and had neither the staff nor the medicine to treat the onslaught of sick patients. More U.S. soldiers were dying from Spanish flu than being killed in battle. When the epidemic hit Chicago, thousands of young adults were stricken and many died. Walt and 2 others in his barracks became so sick, they were released to be hospitalized. When the ambulance arrived, the driver asked, "Kid, do you live in Chicago?" "Yes, I do." "Then let us take you home. If we take you to the hospital, you won't come out alive." So the driver took him to his parents' home and delivered him to his visibly shaken family on a stretcher. Flora put her son in bed and brought in a local doctor who treated him with heavy doses of quinine. Then she nursed him through weeks of high fever and delirium, wrapping him in poultices and treating him with a mother's love and more quinine. Disney remained delirious for more than a week, then slowly regained his strength. Would Walt have survived had the ambulance not taken him home? There's no way to know for sure, but as the driver predicted, the 2 boys admitted to the hospital died a few days later. When Disney attempted to return to his company, he found they'd sailed without him. By the time he reconnected with his unit, the war was over. Yet drivers were still needed to help evacuate troops, so Walt was stationed in Paris on November 11, 1918, just days after the armistice. While in France, Disney earned money by drawing cartoons for soldiers to send home to their loved ones. He also used his skills to paint animal characters on his truck. On a larger scale, the military newspaper Stars and Stripes used some of his drawings in their publications.
Hmm.
Driving his ambulance throughout Europe for the next 12 months gave Walt a broader world perspective. Back in Kansas City. Returning to the States in 1919, Walt turned down an excellent position at the Chicago Jelly Factory and moved to Kansas City. There, hoping to pursue an art career, he took a job at the Pessman Rubin Commercial Art Studio. The position paid $50 a month, but Walt was laid off after only a few weeks for lack of creativity. But that episode wasn't a total loss. While at Pessman Rubin, he met and befriended a fellow artist, Iwerks. Iwerks Disney commercial artists.
There. Now we got people interested. Now they're going to want to be just getting that book.
I hope so.
No, I think so because I think that was a good start to hearing about his story because you can see where he didn't really care for school and being fired for lack of creativity.
Yeah, that's funny.
So do you want to talk a little bit more about it? We were going to listen to the whole thing, but it's quite long. So for this podcast anyways, we can discuss a little bit about it if you want to just point some of the highlights out of that story.
Well, the next part of the story is really interesting because it was his first venture into having a business and owning a business. And I'll give a little of it away. His first businesses were failures. They had sparks of creativity and possibilities, but something always happened that knocked him down. But the thing about Walt Disney was he was so resilient. Every time he got knocked down, it didn't really affect him. He just would get up, dust off his pants, and go again. He knew what he wanted, and he was going to get it regardless of whatever it took. He was going to do whatever it took to get it. And he had several close calls, like the one that we just talked about, where he almost died. Well, that happened to him a couple of other times. So the story is really interesting. It's just long. So for the book to work, you had to have long short stories. And so the Lincoln story and the Disney story and the Andrews sister stories are almost an hour if you just listen to them. I don't know how long it would take to read them, probably a little less than that. But then most of the other short stories are 15 minutes or 10 minutes or 5 minutes. But they're written so that whatever time slot you have, you'll be able to fit that into your day to help you form that habit. So that's how the book is put together.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it together because, we don't always have time to read a longer story like that, right? We're waiting in the doctor's office or something. We got
Right.
15 minutes. So, 15 minutes, you can probably get even a couple of short stories in or a short story and some poems or what have you. So I really think the way that you modeled your book was really great for that to be able to, you can pick and choose what you and when you want to read. So
I think the Disney story is, if it's not my favorite, it's one of the top two. It took a lot of research. There's things in the story that are coming up I'd never heard before. I mean, I had no idea. And some of them are really interesting, and I can't imagine why somebody else hadn't said something about them. But anyway, you get the book and read it, you're going to be surprised at the things that happen to him.
Yeah, it was a very good story. I liked, it was interesting to me because I didn't realize how much he actually struggled to actually get where he was. And, all the hurdles that he got, it was like he'd climb up 2 stairs and fall back down one and, fall back down more and then get back up and keep going. So it was a very interesting story because I had no idea when I read it that that was
It was
his.
all that. It was all that.
Yeah.
I wonder too if the Main Street Electrical Parade that he had even today has got to do with when he was a child, right?
Yeah,
What spurred it for today, like that's pretty interesting too. You know,
right,
because people go just for that thing. You know,
exactly.
they do,
And as you get further into the story, you realize that had it not been for his brother Roy, we wouldn't know the name Disney,
right?
because Walt was really creative and had imagination and could think of things to do, but you had to have Roy to get the money. Roy was really good at going out and finding the money to put it together, so they were a perfect team.
Yes.
Yes, yeah, they definitely complemented each other that way, right? So, which also I think is a really good message about, having those people in your life that are going to help support you as on your journey to get to where you want to go. So I think that's a really positive message out of that
Very
story
much,
as
very
well,
much.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of the secrets of success, the synergy. You you need other people. You need to form quality relationships, because you're not going to be good at everything. There's going to be other people that'll fit in those places where you're weak, and you'll fit in the places where they're weak. So that was a good example of that.
Yeah. And so would the message be that you would want people to take from the Disney story?
I think the strongest message, maybe it's two messages. One is the synergy that there's nothing wrong with forming great partnerships, great alliances to help you get where you want to go. But the strongest part of the story is his resilience, his refusal to give up. He knew what he wanted. He wanted to be recognized in Hollywood as someone that was important, and he wanted to be an artist. He wanted to do things that no one else had ever done. And he did that. He had the first cartoon studio. Well, I won't give the whole story away, but he did a lot of firsts. And the story unveils that. And it's a long story because he did so much. I mean, he never quit dreaming. That's why it's called The Dreamer. He would finish one project and have a bigger project waiting in the wings, and then a bigger one. And it did Disneyland, and it did Disney World, and he had a lot more coming up. But you have to read the story to find out what those were.
I love that because then it leaves people wanting that, right? So that I think that's great. So do you think too that with that, one of the messages too is maybe, you have to know what you want before you can get out there and get on
Right.
that track to get what you want, because I think so often we think we know what we want, and maybe we're following some false paths before we really listen to our heart to find the true one.
That's why there's a lamp on the front of the book. It really is, because it represents the story of Aladdin, who found a lamp and found it was magic. You rub it and the genie came out and it said, "Master, I'm going to give you some wishes. What do you want?" So Aladdin had to come up with something or he got nothing. Well, that's how it is in life. You can get what you want if you know what you want. If you don't, you get up and go to work, come home, watch TV, go back to bed, and then you're going to get a paycheck. And that's all you're ever going to get.
That's
But
right.
if you dream much bigger, which Disney was a big dreamer, just like Conrad Hilton. There's another story about Hilton about being such a big dreamer. And dreams are gifts. Big dreams are gifts from God. God says, "Here, you could do this." And a lot of people think, "Well, yeah, but I don't have the money, I don't have the time, I don't have the education, I don't have the contacts." But you wouldn't have received that gift had everything not already been prepared for you. It's available to you. You just have to take it. Just like with Aladdin, if Aladdin hadn't accepted the genie's gift, he wouldn't have gotten anything.
Right.
That's right. And I think that when things are put on your path like that, I really do believe that they're put there, like you were saying, for a reason to lead you on that path. And the things that will help you achieve those things will show up. That money will show up. Those people to help you step up will. And, one quote that I heard recently that I really love, I actually have a sticky of it in my bathroom. It says, life is happening for me, not to me.
Yes, that's a nice one. Yes.
So just as a reminder, right? Like when, you kind of had a bad day and you're like, ugh, ugh. And then you look at something like that and think, no, you know what? This is all happening in the greater picture that maybe I just can't see right now.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So, well, we have enjoyed this series with you so much, and we sure appreciate you being on and sharing these stories with others. And, I think, like you've said in a couple of the past ones, this would be a beautiful gift for people graduating, or,
Yeah.
somebody that needs just a little pick me up in their life for some inspiration. So, would you tell? Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Just want to add something too, as I like the because you put history in there, and it shows people that it started way back then, but we have it today to celebrate and to enjoy. So follow those dreams, follow the people from back there and what they did to inspire them to build what we are enjoying today. So thank you for that as well.
Well, thank you. I've really enjoyed this. Come to be really good friends with you and look forward to these. It's kind of sad that it's coming to an end, but hope we'll get together again someday.
Yes, I hope so too. Well, hopefully when your next book comes out, you come back on and talk to us about that, because I think that'll be a very exciting book. And so
Inspiring as well.
exactly. So do you want to tell everybody where they can find this book?
Go to realimpactbook.com or to Amazon. You can look at Amazon for Real Impact Daily Inspiration, or put in Dennis J. Henson, or you can just go to Google and type in Dennis J. Henson, and you'll find lots of places where you can purchase the book.
Wonderful. And if they go to your website, they can find all your new upcoming stuff as your new book is going to be released and things like that?
Yes, I'm putting together DennisJHenson.com. If you go there now, it's really under construction. There's some things there, but probably by the time this airs, you'll be able to go to DennisJHenson.com and see all kinds of things that you can purchase for personal, for your business, if for your health. There's 4 areas to it, so go and check that out. I think you'll like that too.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And again, thank you so much for sharing your stories, and for, like Mom said, doing all the research and bringing this historical stuff to people's minds. So thank you so much, and thank you for being with us. We really appreciate it.
We sure do.
And everybody else, we will see you the next time.
Tune in.